A nonprofit is holding anti-free speech students accountable. The Texas A&M University system bans diversity statements in its hiring and admissions processes. It's all coming up in this episode of the Campus Countdown. Hello and welcome to the newest episode of Campus Countdown. I'm your host, Sofie Salmon, and do we ever have some spicy stories for you today? We start out with a tremendous interview with the president of Accuracy in Media, Adam Gillette. Let's dive right in.
I'll just get started. First off, thank you so much, Adam, for joining me. And Adam is here from Accuracy in Media. So Adam, will you tell our audience a little bit more about who you are and what your organization does?
Sure. As you said, I'm the president of Accuracy in Media. We are one of the first conservative activist organizations back from 1969. And what we do is use a combination of hidden camera investigative journalism and cultural activism to hold bad public policy actors accountable. It's a target-rich environment.
Excellent. Well, you guys are out there doing great work, and we love seeing it. So I want to talk to you about an incident that occurred at Stanford University. It kind of took the nation by storm, went kind of viral, where we saw a student group that invited a speaker, United States Circuit Court Judge Kyle Duncan, and an associate dean of diversity, equity, and inclusion hijacked the event and encouraged students to disrupt the event and cause disturbances, gave her little speech, totally inappropriate. What was your reaction seeing all that?
Well, my reaction to all of that was moral outrage. Then when I heard the things that they shouted, including shouting at the judge, "We hope your daughters get raped." If there's a description that's more outrage than moral outrage, I don't know what it is, but it would be perfectly appropriate in these circumstances. These are crybullies, and they are out of control. These are people who've been coddled and who've thrown metaphorical punches their entire student lives and careers, and they probably plan to continue doing so. And it's about time they had to take a metaphorical punch back.
Absolutely. And so according to Stanford University, this dean, this associate dean, is currently on leave. And the students are all going to be required, not just the ones that were involved in the disruption, they're all going to be required to take a mandatory education training. So the students who disrupted this event are going to get off scot-free. What are the chances of Stanford changing any of its policies or students being punished for this behavior in the future?
Well, by the university, the chances of any of that slim to none. You know, you've got a dean of diversity, equity, and inclusion, who we would all say is normally paid to do nothing. Now she's really paid to do nothing, on paid leave, as you said. And then those students who engaged in the bad behavior, and these aren't 18-year-old kids. They're like 24-year-old law students. They are the future George Soros-funded DA, activist district attorneys from across the country. They faced no penalties. The only group that has faced any kind of penalty from the university is the Federalist Society that brought the speaker in. You know, on a campus where free speech is clearly not valued at all, the administration doubled down by claiming, oh yes, we support free speech publicly, but privately telling the Federalist Society to remain quiet on social media and lay low for the next few weeks. So if they're not going to hold these bad actors accountable, we will.
Exactly. And you guys have had a very unique campaign featuring mobile billboards. So can you tell us a little more about what that's entailed and what attention has come from that?
Well, we've hit them on multiple fronts, and we will continue to do so. First, we sent a mobile billboard to their campus with Tyrion Steinbach's URL with an action alert where people could take action to force the university to hold their accountable. Then we began by sending hundreds and hundreds of emails to the Board of Trustees of Stanford University. This includes the CEO of Zillow, amongst other companies. People who, thought, oh, I'll sign on and be on the board, and I don't really want to be that active. Well, we're getting them in the game. In addition, we've ordered tens of thousands of robocalls to concerned Americans where they can be patched through with the direct cell phones of these Board of Trustee members at Stanford University, and we encourage them to politely tell the Board of Trustees there what they think about the situation. In addition, we bought the URLs from all of the student leaders from the law school group. So if you go to theirname.com, it redirects you to a profile page which explains exactly what they did. And then we're sending our billboards back to campus this week and next week with the names, photos, and URLs of those fascist students encouraging people to politely hold them accountable. Plus, I'll be on campus next Tuesday at Stanford as well.
Wow, well, it's great to see groups like AIM taking action and holding these people accountable for what they're doing. And we're seeing this on a bigger scale as now Campus Reform has reported that federal appeals judges have stated that they will not be hiring Stanford University law students and law students from other universities that have engaged in this type of free speech violation and viewpoint discrimination. So if these future attorneys aren't going to be able to handle other opinions, what does the future of law and order in the justice system look like in this country?
Probably just like as bad as it is in the present, except perhaps worse. And that's really why we're taking the fight to these kids, to make an example out of them for other campuses, to encourage people to not engage in this kind of behavior. If you don't like the judge and you want to throw pointed questions at him during Q&A and protest outside, knock yourself out. But this kind of behavior, shouting, "I hope your daughters get raped," is unacceptable. What we also did last week is we sent billboards while the students were on spring break to their parents' homes in Maryland, Virginia, New York, and New Jersey. And it played the Game of Thrones shame soundbite on loop, parked in front of mom and dad's house all week. That way, mom and dad have to answer questions from neighbors as to why their kid is part of a group that called for the rape of the daughters of a federal judge. And some people say, "Oh, you're getting too aggressive." Well, it comes down to this. If the students are proud of what they did, they shouldn't be bothered by us sharing it with as many people as possible. And if they are ashamed of what they did, and they should apologize. And if they apologize for their actions, we'll take down their profile page. We'll stop hitting them with the billboards. Absolutely, we've all made mistakes in life. But rather than apologizing thus far, these student activists have doubled down and sent an email because they're mad that the university hasn't come to their defense at all. That's how emboldened these future attorneys are, and that's why they must be held accountable.
So then what would you say to students who are thinking about engaging in this type of disruptive activity, not letting others speak, shouting obscenities at people who are trying to speak? And also, what would your encouragement be to students who are facing pushback for engaging in open debate and inviting speakers to their campus?
Well, if you're a student who's thinking about engaging in this sort of activity, it's not going to be fun for you. It's not going to be fun for us, but it's going to go on for a long time. You know, last fall when anti-Semitic students at Berkeley Law School engaged in bad behavior, we began a similar campaign there. That campaign is still ongoing. So if you're on any other campus in America right now and you're thinking of engaging in this kind of morally reprehensible behavior, I would think twice, because we will make an example out of you that will follow you for some time. With these students, if you Google their names, the first 1 or 2 results you'll get will be us exposing what they've done. Don't let horrible actions when you're on campus haunt you for the rest of your life. If you want to disagree civilly, if you want to protest outside an event, if you want to ask mean questions during Q&A, that's fine. But don't engage in this sort of morally outrageous behavior. Don't engage in anti-Semitism like they have at Berkeley Law. Don't engage in fascist bullying like they have at Stanford Law, or accuracy in media will come for you.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for providing all that information and for what your group is doing. Can you tell us a little more about where we can find you and how our listeners and viewers can follow your work?
Sure, our website is aim.org, AIM.org. We're also very active on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok. And we'll be releasing more hidden camera investigations from K through 12 education in the next few weeks. I've been in over 200 school districts undercover exposing critical race theory in public schools. We've got more videos coming out of that. We'll be releasing our Man on the Street video from Stanford, which we'll be recording in the next week or so. And we'll make sure that as many people as possible know about the bad behavior that's occurring on college campuses.
Adam, thank you so much for your time, and I'm sure our listeners will check out your work, and thank you so much for all you're doing.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Accuracy in Media is doing the impactful work of bringing attention to and influencing the conversation about free speech and civility on campus, which is clearly lost on many of today's universities. Be sure to check them out and follow up on their creative campaign. Let's move into our campus profile, the part of the show where we examine college campuses based on liberal bias, speech codes, and other relevant policies and factors. This week, we are traveling south to Sam Houston State University, a public school in Huntsville, Texas, about 70 miles north of Houston. Sam Houston State University gets its name from the first regularly elected president and later governor of the then Republic of Texas, Sam Houston, who was heavily involved in the military and with Texas's move toward independence, according to the Texas State Historical Association. The undergraduate population of SHSU is about 18,260 students. In 2020, 89.7% of all political donations made by university staff went to Democrats, while only 10.25% went to Republicans, according to data from Open Secrets. It is interesting to hear that even in the heart of Texas, most university staff align with the left. Following this information, it should be no surprise then that the school has more liberal student organizations than conservative ones, 5-3. SHSU has a yellow light speech code, according to the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. This means they enforce, quote, at least one ambiguous policy that too easily encourages administrative abuse and arbitrary application, unquote. By FIRE standards, one yellow light policy at a public institution is unconstitutional. SHSU has 8. Some of these include their acceptable technology use policy, which disallows students to use school information technology for political gain, the university reserving the right to limit what printed materials students hand out, and the university's loose and overall unidentifiable definition of harassment. Spoiler alert, it has quite a bit to do with students' mental well-being. That would never be misused on a college campus. Additionally, they have a bias reporting system where staff and students can report social media posts or incidents to the university. So enjoy freedom of speech, but watch what you say because someone might snitch on you. Campus Reform has covered SHSU in the past regarding an incident of an anti-socialism memorial being torn down, as well as the 2021 racially segregated graduation ceremonies the school was planning. If you'd like to learn more about Sam Houston State University and to read more campus profiles, head to campusreform.org and click the Campuses tab. Now, let's move to William Biagini, who will give us this episode's top 3 stories.
Thanks, Sophie. In our number 3 story this week, a recent Twitter trend has reignited a debate within the LGBTQ community. The debate involves the lesbian and gay members who are resisting the tendency of queer theory to present conflicting messages about the ability to find love in same-sex relationships. This gives rise to the subject of genetopreferences as the latest debate within the community. Genetopreferences refers to the desire to date someone with specific genitalia. And some Twitter users even said that it is transphobic when a cisgender individual is not sexually attracted to a transgender man or woman. However, others within the community argue that activists looking to abolish genetopreferences altogether are, quote, simply an echo of the choosing the gay lifestyle rhetoric of the late 70s and 80s, end quote. The criticism of the latest trend in transgender activism as homophobic has been shared by journalists in other countries as well, such as Canada and England. One writer for HuffPost, for example, based in London, stated that she can't choose her sexuality nor can she change it. She added that neither can anyone else, for that matter. A writer named E.J. Rosetta described the problem within the transgender community. Rosetta stated that objectives are not necessarily pushed by transgender people, but rather by those she called trans rights activists. Rosetta, while being a self-proclaimed trans ally, noted the harm done by trans rights activists. She stated that, quote, they do not ask, they demand and dictate. And we lesbians wish to be distanced from that, end quote. The writer also said that we are going backwards. In Campus Reform's number 2 story this week, the Texas A&M University system banned diversity statements in its hiring and admissions processes. In this story, Chancellor John Sharp of the Texas A&M system, TAMIS for short, recently announced on March 2nd that it will ban diversity statements from admissions and hiring altogether. This follows a February 6th directive from Governor Greg Abbott that said the state's public colleges and universities should not use diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI in its considerations. Rather, according to a memo written by Abbott's chief of staff, admissions and hiring should be based on merit alone. Sharp stated that, quote, we believe serving Texas can be accomplished best by recruiting the brightest and most qualified students, faculty, and staff, end quote. He also added that, quote, no university or agency in the A&M system will admit any kind of student nor hire any employee based on any factor other than merit. According to the announcement, job applications should only include a cover letter, curriculum vitae, statements about research and teaching philosophies, and professional references. The memo states that rebranding, quote, employment discrimination as DEI does not make the practice any less illegal, end quote. Efforts to eliminate DEI from admissions and hiring at universities have spread to other states as well, following Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' example. In Tennessee, for example, legislation was introduced that would ban DEI requirements from the education, training, and employment of professionals providing services in healthcare, mental health, and social work. Oklahoma's Superintendent of Public Instruction, as well, also issued a DeSantis-style probe into DEI spending at the state's public universities. In our number one story this week, sexual harassment and assault reports at U.S. military academies for the 2021-2022 academic year is the highest on record, according to a Department of Defense (DoD) spokesperson. In the DoD's 2021-2022 annual report on sexual harassment and violence, over 21% of female and 4% of male students at the 3 U.S. military academies self-identified as being victims of sexual assault or rape. As Campus Reform previously reported, preliminary results of the report were released Friday, March 10th. Beth Foster, Executive Director of the Office of Force Resiliency, said in an exclusive press briefing on March 10th that these findings were the highest on record since the measurements of harassment and assault statistics began back in 2006. These investigations on sexual harassment and assault were conducted by the DoD on a 2-year rotation at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, the U.S. Naval Academy, and the U.S. Air Force Academy. Specifically, a total of 155 cases of rape or sexual assault were recorded and investigated during this rotation. Based on the anonymous survey results, only 14% of assaults at the U.S. military academies were reported to leadership. While military institutions differ greatly from civilian universities, Campus Reform has a long history of reporting how the culture of academia in general has a tendency to downplay the significance of sexual assault on campuses. For example, a sex expert who was hired to give X-rated advice to students at the University of Maryland in College Park in 2015 refused to directly answer a student's question as to whether sex positivity is connected to increased rates of sexual violence. Regarding this same issue at military academies, officials expressed their dedication to reducing instances of sexual assault and harassment. Nate Galbraith, acting director of the DoD's Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Office, stated that, quote, "We are working very deliberately with academy leadership to provide cadets and midshipmen places to live and learn that are free from sexual assault and sexual harassment," end quote. And back to you, Sophie.
Thank you, William, for giving us a glimpse into what's happening around the nation's campuses this week. We at Campus Reform are grateful for our viewers. Thank you so much for navigating this week's important college news with us. I want to shout out our Campus Reform correspondents, who are hardworking college students across the country reporting on issues the mainstream media fails to cover. To check out more of the amazing work of these true professionals, you can visit us at www.campusreform.org. You can also find us on all social media channels at Campus Reform. That's all for today. Signing off, I'm Sofie Salmon. This has been the Campus Countdown.